Welcome to Born2Unicorn, where we explore the incredible journey of entrepreneurs and venture capitalists shaping the future. Today, I'm thrilled to welcome a true innovator and leader in the world of startups and venture capital, Esteban Sosnik. Esteban is the managing partner at Rich Capital, an early stage venture capital fund focused on transforming the way we learn, we work, and stay healthy. He's actively shaping the future as a board member for groundbreaking companies like Cometa, Innovamat, Coder House, Matfix, Springboard, and Mainstay. But that's just the start of Esteban's impressive career. Before Reach, he founded Games and Learning Accelerator in partnership with Singa, a visionary initiative that blended technology, creativity, and education. He's also a seasoned entrepreneur. Actually, he's a Endeavor high impact entrepreneur. And he co founded and served as CEO of two successful gaming companies, Atacama Labs, where I met him like 15 years ago, and the company was acquired by Japan DNA in 2011, and Wanako Games, which became part of Activision in 2006. Esteban's journey began at JP Morgan, but his passion for fostering innovation soon led him to launch Penguin, one of the first pre-seed funds for Latin American startups in the early 2000s. He's not just an investor or entrepreneur. Esteban is a visionary who's been in the forefront of driving meaningful changes across industries. Let's dive into this journey. Esteban, welcome to Born2Unicorn.
Great. Thank you, Juan, so much for having me. It's an honor to be here.
Thank you very much to you. Let's start a little bit with when you realized that you was an entrepreneur, right? Many people want to be entrepreneurs, but I believe you have to have something. There is something in the DNA, and at some point in your life is sparks, and you realize, yes, I'm an entrepreneur. I want to do this. Do you remember when was that?
Yes, it's a really interesting question that you ask. I remember when I was in early childhood, elementary school, high school, I was the kid who was always thinking about new ideas, and I was always thinking new business ideas, like, walking down my neighborhood, we should, there should be an ice cream parlor here, or a shoe repair thing here, or go, traveling and then going back to my city thinking, I should bring this or that. But it was always an idea. I did not, my parents one is an educator, the other one is a doctor. I did not have a role model in business, but I did realize at an early age that my passion was to be a change maker. I kind of translated that idea of like thinking of new businesses as I really like having an impact and change the societies I live in. And the one thing that was really discussed in my family was politics. It was, politics was a daily conversation. So my mind went, okay, if I want to create an impact in the world, I thought the best way to do it, and we're talking about the late 80s, very early 90s, was to become a diplomat. So I went to school to study political science. Eventually, through political science, I discovered economics, and I fell in love with economics. So I ended up studying both political science and economics. But I kept thinking about, becoming a diplomat and going into multilateral organizations. And fortunately, through my social capital, people in my school and friends of the family who were working at international organizations, I came to the realization that state wasn't the best place to start a career. And it felt that it was very slow moving. I'm a person who's always likes change and rapid pace. And also that the impact actually that one person can have in those big, large state organizations is quite minimal. And I felt the impact could actually be much bigger in the business world. So I started my career right out of college in banking. I worked in investment bank, like you mentioned, and then, but really the trigger of becoming an entrepreneur was by working in Penguin, which is the fund that you mentioned. We were doing early seed investments across Latin America. And that's when I was working alongside incredible entrepreneurs and funding other incredible entrepreneurs. And that just inspired me to realize, actually, this is what I love. I love the idea of creating something from scratch and having millions of people use it. And that's when I became really passionate about, becoming an entrepreneur, and actually propose to them to, instead of, keep investing in other people's ideas, to that they would invest in my own. So ultimately, it's a social capital that inspired me, allowed me to get inspired by other entrepreneurs, that triggered me to become a founder myself.
It's fantastic. You're talking about the early 2000s and being a VC. In that era, it was totally different, because right now it's easy. Everybody's talking about, Mercado Libre, Globant, and, all the Latin American unicorns. And, actually Latin America is probably one of the places where VCs in the entire world right now are looking for to invest, and where most possibilities are in terms of investment. But that was in the early 2000s. How was the market in the 2000s? How are the entrepreneurs? Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, it was. Look, actually, even before working in Penguin, I worked at another small fund back in Argentina, and my partner there was, my boss actually there had founded a couple of retail, a pharmacy and a retail business. And I was really inspired by, just walking down the street and seeing people carrying the bags of his stores, and visiting those stores. I was like, wow, what an amazing experience to be had. But really, I became enamored by the scale that technology can provide. That's why when I started working with Penguin and the founders there, it was just incredible to feel that you can really start a global company, not a company in your neighborhood or your city, but really a global, regional and global company from your garage. And that was exactly the origins of Mercado Libre. So I would say at the time, there was, capital was non-existent. Venture capital was non-existent in the region. Interestingly enough, the investors investing across Latin America were the investment banks, and I had come from that world. The New York, Citibank and JP Morgan and Goldman Sachs and Chase were doing most of the investing, but they were doing primarily Series A, so there was very little, if non-existent capital to get started. So it was really, really challenging, and that was kind of the role that Penguin, the fund that I managed, came to play. Eventually, and this is fast forward, my second startup got started in 2011. No, sorry, in 2009. Sorry, 2009. So 9 years later.
That was Atacama, right?
I was at Atacama, and even in that, I got funding by two Chilean funds, but even at that time, the local venture market was so unsophisticated that it literally took me a month to get a letter, a term sheet to fundraise my company, but 9 months to close it. 9 months to, it's something that unheard of, right? Because they really were, this was the first investment. I think there were two funds co-investing. For one of them was the first investment, for the other one was the second or third, and they just did not know the business. So it took us 9 months to do the closing of that investment. So it's come a long, long way. The region now has incredible investors, the Kazakhs and Monashis, and there's so many incredible investors, many of which I know well, many of which now I'm co-investing with here at Reach, that it's a pleasure to see finally capital, not only capital being accessible, but actually capital being accessible at terms that are market terms, right? Because there were many, many years, including, those first 10 years, where you started seeing some emergence of venture, but the terms that they were demanding were completely non-market. They still had like much more of a private equity or, private investor, owner type of terms, and now they really are much closer to what you would see in a term sheet in any other kind of more developed venture capital market in the world, which really makes a big, big difference. Not all capital is made equal. And now these organizations are also growing to become not only capital providers, but services providers. And they really have come to accumulate a lot of knowledge, and that really can help founders, through their growth journeys.
And I can imagine that at that time, there was no thesis, right? Today, like venture capital funds, they have like they know, that they should invest in entrepreneurs with this profile or the other profile in this industries or the other ones. At that time, it was like building, right? Like making the way at the moment you was trying to build it, right? To build the
Yeah.
industry. So, do you remember at that time what kind of variables were you looking at in order to say, yeah, this I want to invest in this person? Because at the end of the day, you invest in the people, right?
Yes. Well, at the time, frankly, there was, like you said, I mean, broadband was just starting to get rolled out in Latin America. So at the time, it was frankly, we were investing in team. Nobody had any type of experience with digital,
Yeah.
with building digital products. Actually, my founders that who supported me had in a big way because they had developed one of the largest tech companies in the region at the time, which was Patagon, right?
Hmm.
So they had an incredible network and experience, but most entrepreneurs didn't. So we were looking at people who were coachable, who had big dreams, and really had dreams that to become. We understood that not particular market was big enough, so you really needed to have a vision that was regional. Companies that could be deployed across Latin America, and people that could move very quickly, across geographies and build teams and products very quickly. But yeah, it was a new world for everybody, and the thesis was frankly that the world was going to become digital. I remember having a board meeting in at the time of Penguin, and one of our board members said there will be a world where right now if we cut down electricity, imagine all the people that how disruptive that would be for society. There will be a day when that same thing happens when we cut off the internet, and it seemed crazy at the time because we were using internet 5-10% of our time, very very little, and only 1% of the population was using it. But that's definitely become a reality. That was our vision, our guiding mission of like, we need to build that future today.
And that's going to happen with AI as well, right? Because we are all right relying on AI for a lot of things that in the past we were doing by ourselves. So in the
Mm-hmm.
future, if I don't know, AI is not available, probably it's going to be the same thing as if today we don't have a internet, right?
Yeah, AI will make every digital product that we and non-digital as well eventually, but that we consume will be embedded in everything we do. So we won't even notice that how the power of AI that's behind the products and services that we use. That will be everywhere for sure.
Do you have any story you can tell us of the early 2000 about some company you invested in, something that you believe is relevant for today market as well?
In the early 2000s,
Yes.
well, the company where we have been most proud to support is Mercado Libre, no doubt, and I find that Marcos and his team are just incredible, exceptional founders, who've had incredible impact not only as company builders but also supporting the ecosystem at large. And I think one of the big lessons, and Marcos talks about it. He had an opportunity to sell. I mean, kind of sustaining that mission and across around. It's easy to look at it now and be like, well, you've been able to attract such a dominant position in the market that eventually led to a very very big company. But along the way, there are millions of decisions he made around strategic, including selling the company, right? So it takes a lot of determination to really not give up, and definitely the journey, it's incredibly rocky. There are moments of tremendous joys, but there are many many more moments of tremendous struggle. So that's one example, because you're born to be a unicorn. So to build a unicorn, it's a marathon. It's not a sprint. It takes not years, decades, and it just demands that amount of dedication, hard work, luck, and vision, really. So that's one. The other piece that's really interesting about Mercado Libre in particular is how much they've been able to innovate. They started as an e-commerce company. Now they're as much of a e-commerce company as a payments company and a logistics company. So, even they've had to, keep innovating and innovating themselves. Otherwise, they would have been taken over by other players, right? So
yeah, and it's interesting that being an endeavor entrepreneur myself, I had the opportunity to talk with a lot of these like unicorn founders, right? And the more of these, very very smart guys that I met, I realized that it's not by chance that they got the companies they grew the company in the way they did, right? Yesterday I was talking with someone that built a company that grew from 1 million to 1 billion in 3 years, right?
in
And
revenue,
in revenues, yes, in revenues. So,
incredible.
so it's
That's
incredible. And
unheard of, by the way. That's no. I mean, for everybody watching, just so they know, that's not common. That's extremely outlier. That's 0.01% of companies in the world do that. But
yeah, definitely, definitely.
yeah,
And this person, herself, she said, uh, she never thought she was going to be able to do something like this, right? So basically, she crashed 3 companies before that. But in any case, the from the outside, it seems like these unicorn founders are outliers, are people that are like superheroes, right? But when you meet them, you realize they're not superheroes, but they are people that, as you just mentioned, they run a marathon, right? They know that they have to make a lot of decisions, right? And they try to do everything perfectly fine, and they push forward and they try to make a real good business. Um, so it's not actually chance, as many people believe.
yeah,
Do you have any take on this? Like, do you probably in your experience you have a lot of people you met and you said, this guy will be successful because I
yeah,
see something in them, right?
yeah, for sure. I would say I would differ from what you said in that when you mentioned they make everything right, they actually, I would say, kind of the opposite. They move very fast and they make a lot of mistakes, but they are very quick to learn.
Yeah,
I mean,
agree.
that's a
Agree. You're
really,
right.
really critical. That's a
Yes.
real critical aspect of being a founder. You need don't look for perfection. Just you will remember the first image that came to my mind when Elon Musk launched the Cybertruck and he threw that brick or hammer in, and thinking it would be indestructible, and it broke apart.
Or Bill Gates with a blue screen.
Exactly. So there
Yeah.
are hundreds of examples of things like that. So the speed of change and being able to make mistakes and learn from them, it's such a critical aspect of entrepreneurship in general. And I would say, yeah, I think the other one is, you definitely, to identify somebody who's going to go for the long term, you need to have a vision of the future and a real commitment to your mission, right? A vision for what this could become. I would say it's really difficult to build a vision while you're operating. We've seen many times companies grow to 10, 20, 50 million dollars in revenue, but not really have a vision of how to go beyond that. And they do okay and they tend to sell, but they don't get bigger than that, right? So it's really difficult to develop, not impossible, but difficult to develop a vision if you don't start with one. And an understanding that it will take decades. It's not a years, it's not a marathon, it's not a sprint, it's a marathon. And that you have to enjoy the journey as much as you can, that the goalpost will keep moving. It's impossible. You ask Marcos now, he's going to be worried. Marcos, he's going to be worried about 200 things, but that are very different to what he was worried back when he, had maybe 6 months of runway in his bank account. But there's still very big things that he's worried about, and we all are, right? So the goalpost keeps moving. So you're always going to have problems. You're always going to have. So it's important to move quickly, but also enjoy the process. Particularly, how do you enjoy the process while you're struggling? In my point of view, surround yourself with amazing people. I find the most joy in life by sharing the journey with people I admire, I respect, I learn from, and that I enjoy being around with. And that's what my current partnership is at Rich Capital. And that's really, I think, so critical for every founder to do and really prioritize first and foremost the,
Fantastic.
the team that he built.
Yeah, no, it's very interesting because um, it seems like there are like perfect formulas, and you just mentioned something that is, I believe, so important is, like um, the passion is probably one of the things. The other thing is, what do you think about, now that being a founder of a startup it became so popular, right? What do you think about starting a company for the money? What is your
It's
take?
exactly it's the worst idea you could have. It's the worst idea you could have, and it's a simple explanation why. That's why, I love you, Juan, and your effort to inspire entrepreneurs. But starting a company thinking I'm going to build a unicorn is probably because a unicorn is literally a company worth $1 billion or more.
Correct.
So that's an output. That's not an input, and that's the output of having a great product, great service, great team operating in a big market, and that's going to happen. That's going to solve itself eventually, right? But that should never be the goal. And the reason is clear. I mean, if you're in for the money, we talked about being a marathon. If you're in for the money, in the first, second, third problem that you have, you're going to give up. You're going to give up if you think the money is not there. If you're not really, the only reason why people keep going is because they're really, really committed to a mission, and they want to solve. It's a problem they want to solve, an opportunity they are really, really committed with, and also they surround themselves with great people that push each other as well, co-founders or the team in general. But starting for the money is the absolute worst reason to start a large global tech company. Yeah.
Yeah, that's interesting. And you're talking about surrounding of good people. One of the cases that probably in the world of entrepreneurship um, would make a lot of sense at the beginning, and it's a fantastic case, and that's why I believe it's hard to put like an unicorn into like a box. It's impossible, right? It's like more like an outlying situation. Is Globant, right? So
Mm-hmm.
they are four entrepreneurs, which is normally
Mm-hmm.
they tell four entrepreneurs is a probably is
Mm-hmm.
going to be a lot of problems, which in most cases is true. The
Mm-hmm.
second one is a service company, so normally it won't scale, right? But at the end of the day, Globant is a fantastic case of conquering something that it was, but most people believed it was not possible, right?
Yeah.
Do you have any take on Globant and in these kind of startups?
Well, what I love about Globant is that they've realized that Latin America is full of talent, and in for people, the younger people in the audience, and it still is somewhat, but India was sort of the back office of the U.S. tech market and
Mhm.
tech industry in general, and they've realized, hey, we have equally as talented people across Latin America that could really serve, and a new generation of companies, emerging. There were early customers of theirs was, I remember, LinkedIn, Google, Electronic Arts, so new kind of digital companies, and they realized Latin America has the potential to serve them, and I love that about them. They thought I've throughout my career many times I've worked around bridging the Latin American talent with the American market. That was actually the two gaming companies that I started were all about that, bridging talent in Latin America to develop products for the global markets. And that's exactly what they did as well. And they've expanded. They have people all over the world. Actually, today I interviewed somebody in New York who had worked at Globant, and she was now the marketing executive at Ogilvy. So you see Globant people all over the world, but it came from a premise of this um, you know, thinking around, opportunities everywhere, just not evenly distributed. Hey, talent is everywhere, but opportunity is not evenly distributed, right? So I love that they capitalized on that, and they've done incredibly well with that and with that vision.
So there are no secret formulas. And you just mentioned something interesting, that is the talent in Latin America. I believe, I definitely believe that is a great uh, source of talent. The talent you find in Latin America is just fantastic. The entrepreneurship is fantastic. But do you believe that the opportunities are just the same? Let's say a Latin American startup has the same opportunities that a startup that is based in Silicon Valley?
Yes, I think um, so. I think there's such an incredible opportunity now with AI, with the emergence of AI in all emerging markets,
Mhm.
because a lot of the lack of digital, consumers have already become digital kind of everywhere, but businesses haven't as much, right? If you look at the unicorns in Latin America, they tend to be, for the most part, consumer businesses, Nubank, Rappi, Mercado Libre. But there's not a lot selling to businesses. That's because businesses don't have not bought as much software yet. But that's starting to happen, and I think AI is a huge enabler of that, because the capabilities and interaction, such a much more intuitive way to interact with technology, through voice, through pictures, through a common language, right? That I feel AI, it's going to leap forward a lot of businesses, particularly, and population and consumers, to use technology in a much deeper way. And I think it provides an incredible opportunity to create new companies in Latin America and, frankly, across all emerging markets.
Yeah.
We currently have an investment which we announced recently called Teachy,
Mhm.
started in Brazil. It's a tool for teacher productivity using AI agents. And the beautiful, they started in Brazil. They then quickly started getting traction in Latin America, and now they're getting a lot of traction in Southeast Asia as well.
Wow.
So the world is flatter than ever, and the reason for that is because AI makes products easier to localize, and makes technology much more intuitive for populations across the world.
Now I would like to move a little bit about your jump, the big leap you took into EdTech. You're a person with an incredible trajectory, you know, fantastic background, and more than anything else, you are a person that I profoundly admire because you do things because you help other people, right? I can say this: you was my client when I was based in Argentina. You had your company with Atacama Labs. You was in Silicon Valley. You trust me as a provider, as a vendor for these services. But it seems like you try to help everybody, and with the possibilities you have, basically you can work in any industry. You can work as an investor, as an entrepreneur. You can raise capital, whatever. At some point, you said, "I want to work in edtech," right? Um, and actually, everybody, what is growing today a lot is fintech, and everybody's doing fintech, and now then is AI, and then everybody is in AI, right? And you seem like to go in another direction. It's like, how can I help humanity? How can I help the world? Um, how hard is to make decisions that affects your life and everything, but that everybody's looking for the money, and you are like, no, I prefer to make decisions that help me help other people,
Mhm.
because it seems fantastic from the outside, but it probably is a hard decision to make, right?
Yeah. First of all, thank you. I'm honored by everything you said. Um, Look, I've always enjoyed starting small, and starting as a big fish in a small pond rather than a small fish in a large pond. And I always love being a bit of a contrarian. When I did Penguin, there wasn't any venture capital in Latin America. When I created, the when I got my first game studio, there wasn't any game studio across Latin America either. In education technology, there was almost no activity in venture at all in education technology. So I love being a contrarian and looking at opportunities that, and becoming a leader in areas and kind of expanding from there. By the way, we moved on from EdTech recently, as we were talking about, as you were making the introduction, and we're
Hmm.
focusing as well in health and work,
Yep.
and learning health and work. So starting small and then thinking big, it's something that I love in myself and that I love in the founders that I back. As far as making an impact, I just don't see my life doing anything else. Frankly, it is what gives me joy every day. I did. When I was thinking on my next career move, as I exited my second gaming company, I really reflected on what did I feel were the largest problems that society faced, and I felt like climate and global, climate change and education were the ones, and I felt that my skills were particularly well suited for education, and my skills as an entrepreneur and my knowledge in gaming. I was really fascinated by that intersection of gaming and gamification and education. So that's why I decided to dedicate myself to this, and it's been an absolute pleasure. And definitely, my happiest days are not the days that we receive, dividends from companies or exit companies. My happiest days are the incredible stories that we get from the way that the users of our companies, we hear about the users of our companies, the way that our companies are affecting users and communities at large.
Yeah, and we just talk about the idea of starting a company for money or for passion or whatever, and it seems like when you have passion for something, you have an unfair advantage of that, right? I don't know if, in my case, for instance, I don't like fishing, but when I see someone talking about fishing with passion, it's like I want to grab um,
Yes.
a pole in pole is called the cane, whatever, and go fishing, right? And because there's something, and when people have passion for something, that is very contagious, right?
Yeah.
Um, do you see that when you're evaluating companies? You see that passion in the entrepreneurs?
100%. And passion can be, found in all kinds of places, and inspiration, sometimes it's a very personal story, founders having a personal story and the relationship with their parents or their siblings. Sometimes can be something they notice on society, kind of unprivileged people go through certain things. So it can be found in many different ways. But yeah, I completely agree with you. Passion is it's easy to perceive, and it's so sticky. Like, once you have it, it's difficult to get rid of it, and it's contagious, and it's a force that keeps driving most founders that go the long way, which is what we're looking for as venture partners.
What do you think is more important in an entrepreneur? The soft skill, the hard skills, both?
Definitely the soft skills. I mean, the hard skills can be learned, but the skills of communication, team building, those are really, really difficult to gain over time. So that's really, really important. And you can always hire people, and not only you can always do it, you should do it. Hire people better than yourself. When I started in gaming, I wasn't a technologist. I didn't know anything about gaming development, but I hired an incredible team around me that was much better than me, and we developed two incredible companies. And so can anybody do. But you have to have that vision and that leadership and frankly charisma to be able to transmit that mission to your employees, to shareholders, clients, etc.
That's interesting what you mentioned. I met a person that I won't say the name. It's a very well recognized entrepreneur, like
Mm-hmm.
a several times unicorn entrepreneur and
Mm-hmm.
investor. And the recommendation he gave me is the best CEOs, the best founders are jerks. Invest in them, but don't
Mm-hmm.
work for them. What's
Mm-hmm.
your take on that?
There's there's definitely something to that. I mean, founders that follow the rules and do everything by the book are quite unlikely to have success. I mean, when you're creating a company, many times you're creating a new market. You're building a market. You're not going after an established market that already exists. Most of the times, you're creating new markets, and you're pushing the envelope. You're creating a new market. You're gonna bother incumbents for sure. You might bother regulatory. We saw it in the case of Uber and Airbnb most recently. Now AI, we'll see with OpenAI, and people won't become people. Most people don't like change, particularly the system. The incumbents don't like change. Government doesn't love change. So you're going to have to be, a jerk in a way of like, you're going to have to, break things, go fast and break things most of the times, and fix them along the ways. And that's okay, as long as you're a principled person and knows why you do what you do, and you're not going, not a jerk in a way of like going behind people. On the contrary, we only invest, frankly, I could be friends of any of the founders and they're all different people that I back, but they're all very, very different people, but they're 100% people with values, that are honest, transparent, but you need to be aggressive, and to be aggressive, sometimes you need to break some rules, definitely. And if you're not willing to do that, it's really difficult to create disrupting companies.